Yeah, thanks so much, James, for chatting with us. And
No
I would
worries.
say good morning, but I know it's not morning where you are.
You
So good day.
Yeah, good day.
But so you recently released a new song and music video, "Chew on My Heart." Can you tell us a little bit about that track and that video?
Yes, Chill My Heart. The writing of that song began pretty much with the title. It started, I was in a room with a guitar and sort of playing chords and kind of la 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 humming melodies and trying to create melodies before there were any words. And when you're doing that as a songwriter and you're kind of, like I say, sort of shaping words and looking for things, whether you know what you want to write about or not, you go on that journey. And the sort of vowel sounds formed and then the phrase chew on my heart. And I just knew at that point that that was, and it rarely goes like this for me, it goes like this for some songwriters, but at that point I was like, well, whatever happens today, I'm writing a song called Chew on My Heart, because I just loved it. I just really loved the title. And I guess again, for songwriters in that scenario, and it happens all manner of ways, but in that scenario you see if there's something, a real life situation that you can attach to a phrase, or vice versa, see if you can attach a phrase to a scenario. And the song reflects what a lot of the album is about, which is, the shorthand way of putting it is, I've sort of written this tribute to my 13-year long relationship with my girlfriend without necessarily setting out to do that, because I'm quite private about all of that stuff, but it's what's happened. And so here we are, and Chill My Heart as a song was born.
Was that the first song that you wrote for the new album, or what can you kind of share with us about the rest of the music, the upcoming project that you're working on?
It was not the first song that I wrote for this album. I wrote it kind of in the middle of the whole process, but actually it was a sort of turning point, as happens when you are essentially writing for an album, while you're trying to collect what you think hopefully will be a good single along the way, maybe 3-4 times as you write. I was writing for an album. What I've found out, only having made 2 records and some EPs at this point, so not a lot of music, but I want to push a boundary somewhere, somehow. After my first album, the first EP I ever released was an acoustic thing. And I knew that I wanted like drums and bass and some sort of band sound on the full album. So that happened. And that for me was a small pushing of a boundary. Everybody just knew me in the very beginning as a guy with an acoustic guitar, and that was that. So it got a bit fuller on the first record. On the second record, I really pushed the sonic boundaries for myself as an artist, and things, suddenly there were synthesizers involved and this, that. And I even sort of pushed for what I thought were just more kind of exciting and out there song titles. There were songs on my second record called Sugar Drunk High or Pink Lemonade or Wild Love. I hadn't written songs with titles like that before, and I wanted to really sort of signpost some sort of change, because of course it's me at the end of the day every time, so that's always going to be the same. And on this record, on the third record, I've realized, and I realized this again, like after I'd written all the music, I listened back, and this is because I got home from making the record in Nashville. I got home and lockdown began, so I suddenly had quite a lot of free time to just sit and listen and digest what I'd been doing. And lyrics was the boundary pushed the most. And like I said about Chew on My Heart, I'll say it about the whole record. Like, this is sort of maybe the most positive, but also the most personal music I've ever written.
This year has been weird. We've all been at home a lot, but one of the things that you did was do Instagram live guitar lessons.
Right.
So I was sort of curious what it felt like for you to engage with your fans in that way.
Yeah, it was completely wonderful, to be honest. And I say that as somebody who was not readily jumping onto Instagram live every night before lockdown. That was just not my way of doing things. I wasn't, I wasn't a heavy user of social media in that respect, and I've become a heavier user, and I'm okay with that. I've really enjoyed connecting with people, because there have not been many ways to connect other than over the phone, texting, emailing somebody, or social media. So for the most part of all of this, you know, COVID-19 issues so far. So it's just been, it's picked me up sometimes, you know. I hope, I can only hope, and I've sort of found out and heard that it's picked other people up sometimes as well. It's just a sort of 20-minute, 30-minute burst of something creative that I felt like I could kind of offer, because I'm not a scientist able to solve this issue. I'm just not, and I'm not a politician able to offer great master plans about how to arrange ourselves now as a human race. I'm a songwriter and an entertainer. I stand on stage and I try and move people with stuff that moves me too. And so I tried to sort of squeeze that through the narrow avenue that is an Instagram live stream, and it's been fun, you know. It's been really lovely, and hopefully it'll carry on. There'll be reason for it to carry on, you know, outside of just a sort of a global pandemic.
You mentioned Nashville. So I know earlier in the year before quarantine, you were in the studio with the legendary Dave Cobb.
Yeah.
So I was curious what that experience felt like for you, and what your biggest takeaway working with him and working in Nashville was.
That's a wonderful question, and there's about 4 hours of answer, so I'll try and narrow it down. Because we got in there at the end of February, and we came out at the end of March. And lots of things changed in people's sort of hands, literally, as we were in the studio, and there's a glancing at the phone in that time, and a headline comes up about like a pandemic. And we went, first 2 weeks, we had a great time. Second 2 weeks, we had a great time, but with that anxiety hanging over our heads. Anyway, so that was a substantial sort of atmosphere shifter in the experience. But the experience was insane. I worked with Dave, who of course has done so many incredible things. In RCA Studios in Nashville. There's RCA Studio B, very famous for all the fantastic Elvis music that's been made there. And then Dave is in Studio A, which is a much bigger room, which was fun for us, really kind of spreading out and stretching our legs and getting a whole band in there, and like having 3 or 4 drum kits set up at the same time to just jump onto different stuff. That was amazing. He has a wall of amplifiers, which, you know, my little heart burst when I saw it. But I'll never forget. I'll say 2 more things about it, kind of to answer your question. One is just an anecdote. I'll never forget the first afternoon I spent with Dave in there. We weren't working. We were just saying hi and hanging out. And it was my first time in that room. And he said, yeah, you know, there's been some really important music made in here. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, what have you got? Not having known too much about the space, the history of the space myself. He said, well, about where you're standing, sometime in the late 70s, Dolly Parton was in the studio, and in the space of 3 hours, she recorded Jolene and I Will Always Love You in that spot right there. And probably the rest of her life was made, which is just, you know, I thought to myself, sweet, no pressure. Let's make a record and see if it's even 4 out of 10 decent against something like Dolly Parton's legendary catalog. And then the other thing I'll just say about the time spent with Dave is that he wants to trust his gut instinct and the energy in the room during takes 1 to 5, and then move on to the next song. And we can go back, we can do this, we can do that. But I love how certain he is that there is just a very unique magic somewhere in those first few takes of a song. Sometimes, even in our case, in take 1 of a song, which is really exciting to be able to say coming away from those sessions.
That's cool. Like I wasn't there, but I'm excited like hearing you talk about it. So I can only imagine. Well, speaking of epic performances, you also shared the stage last year with Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, Nathan East, and some other guitar legends at Crossroads Fest. Again, probably hard to summarize, but what did that moment feel like for you? Because I think I read that you taught yourself guitar to Clapton's Layla when you were a kid. So yeah, what was that like being with your heroes?
Yeah, it was insane. It made sort of the 11-year-old inside me that I once was, and that in some part I'll always still be, burst with joy. Because yeah, when I was about that age, I was probably 13 the first time I bought a Eric Clapton Crossroads Festival DVD, having already fallen head over heels in love with his music, and yeah, age 11 started to try and teach myself to play Layla. I followed all the DVDs of the festivals. I didn't get to go to America till I was like 22. But so for over 10 years, I was just buying the DVD whenever they came out, through all the times that he did one of those festivals, and just drooling at the lineup every time, thinking, you know, I guess because for the most part, it's legends, it's older guitar legends. So I'd watch those DVDs and think, well, as long as Eric Clapton lives until he's 175, then I'll be old enough as a legend, maybe, to be on one of these bills if I really work hard and do all my guitar homework. It was a letter. I got a letter from Eric Clapton himself, which is brilliantly old school, that said, you know, we'd really love to have you. And we went for the Saturday and the Sunday. Oh, sorry, the Friday and the Saturday. We didn't play on the Friday, but we got to be there all day. I actually got invited to be on stage by Sheryl Crow. She had me up to do Every Day is a Winding Road on the Friday night, which was wild. And Eric was there. He was kind of bobbing around. He's very much like running the show from behind the scenes, which is very cool to see a 74-year-old dude just doing it. Like no stress, just doing it. And then but I didn't get to meet him on the Friday. And I had never met him before, only very, very briefly in airport security once upon a time. Doesn't really count. He was super cool even then, though. Anyway, on the Saturday we played. Earlier on in the evening, we were kind of some more of the young guns. And just before I went on stage, thinking, I've still not met him. I hope I get to. I hope he's maybe watching even 2 seconds of our set. He came up from behind me, or like a lady came up from behind me with a headset on. She turned me around, and it was dark backstage, and she said, "Eric, this is James." He said, "Of course." And he hugged me, and it was like, oh, it was complete dreams coming true, because he's my guitar hero, truly. Like I have many guitar heroes, but he's the main one. And he said like, "Thank you so much for coming. It means so much that you made it. I can't believe you made it." And he's saying all these things, and you're like, what are you talking about? I cancelled the rest of my life to be here. So it was very cool to get to do it, and to be on stage later on that night with him was, I mean, take my silence as the answer. It was nuts.